The desert winds of the ancient Near East carry the metallic scent of blood and the heavy dust of shattered empires. Abram, the wandering Chaldean, who heard the voice of the unseen God, stands victorious but weary in the valley of Shaveh. The slaughter of the foreign kings is finally over. 4 great tyrants from the east, led by the fearsome Chedorlaomer, had swept through the Jordan plains like a storm of locusts, devouring kingdoms, capturing wealth, and enslaving the innocent. Among those taken was Lot, Abram's nephew. Family and covenant demanded action, and Abram struck with righteous fury. With only 318 trained men born in his household, this nomadic patriarch pursued the massive coalition armies into the deep shadows of Dan. Under the cloak of midnight, Abram struck, scattering the conquerors, reclaiming the stolen plunder, and liberating his kin from the chains of certain death. Now, the adrenaline of combat fades, leaving behind the profound, aching silence of the King's Valley. Abram's men are exhausted, their bronze swords nicked, their tunics stained with the dark evidence of survival. They march slowly homeward, driving the recovered flocks and leading bewildered captives back toward the south. As the burning sun begins its descent, casting long golden shadows across the limestone ravines, a strange procession approaches. 2 kings are coming out to meet the victorious Abram. One is Bera, the wicked king of Sodom, representing the corrupt, decaying world Abram just fought to reclaim his nephew from. But another majestic figure descends from the hills of Moriah, from a small fortified city known as Salem. This man does not march with the swagger of a warlord, nor does he carry the grasping aura of the king of Sodom. He moves with an otherworldly, serene, and absolute dignity. He is Melchizedek. His name translates directly from the ancient tongues as the King of Righteousness, and he is the sovereign of Salem, which means peace, King of Righteousness, King of Peace. He steps into the blood-soaked valley, a sudden oasis of divine tranquility amidst the chaotic aftermath of human warfare. The king of Sodom deeply desires the spoils, eager to negotiate for the return of his people. Yet, as Melchizedek approaches, even this corrupt ruler must fall completely silent. There is an undeniable authority resting upon the shoulders of the king of Salem, an ancient weight that commands immediate reverence. Who exactly is this man? The book of Genesis introduces him abruptly, without warning, tearing open the fabric of the narrative. In a world utterly obsessed with genealogies, tribal lineages, and the ancestral rights of kings, Melchizedek has no recorded father. He has no recorded mother. He simply emerges fully sovereign. He has no genealogy, no beginning of days, and no end of life recorded in the sacred scrolls. He steps out of the mists of antiquity, unheralded and unexplained, standing as a towering monolith of mystery in the biblical landscape. He is not just a king, he holds a higher office. Melchizedek is explicitly named as the priest of God Most High, El Elyon, long before Moses ascended Sinai, long before the Levitical priesthood was established, long before Aaron wore the jeweled breastplate. There was a priesthood, a primordial, while universal priesthood that recognized the one true creator of heaven and earth. Abram, the great father of faith, the man to whom God promised the entire world, looks upon this Canaanite king and immediately recognizes his spiritual superior. Abram does not draw his sword. He does not demand tribute. Instead, the wealthy, victorious patriarch bows his head in profound humility and deep respect. What does this mysterious priest-king bring to the weary warriors? Not the blood of slaughtered heifers, not the roasted flesh of lambs. In a stunning departure from the ancient world's sacrificial norms, Melchizedek brings forth simple bread and wine. It is a staggering, prophetic anomaly that echoes through the corridors of time. Bread and wine, the fruit of the earth and the work of human hands, the simplest staples of human existence, yet elevated in the hands of this righteous king to a profoundly sacred offering. He provides physical nourishment for Abram's exhausted men, but a much deeper spiritual liturgy is quietly unfolding. Imagine the cinematic beauty of this moment. The setting sun paints the sky in bruised hues of purple and red. The dust settles on the armor of the victorious army. In the center of the valley stands Melchizedek, raising the unleavened bread and the skin of dark, rich wine toward heaven. The priest-king lifts his voice, rich and resonant, echoing off the valley walls. Blessed be Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, and blessed be God Most High, who delivered your enemies into your hand. It is a benediction of supreme cosmic significance, anchoring Abram's military victory in God. You notice the immense theological weight of this blessing. The inspired author of Hebrews reminds us centuries later, it is beyond dispute that the inferior is blessed by the superior. Abram, carrying the covenant promises of God, containing within his loins the future tribes of Israel, submits to the King of Peace. In response to this divine blessing, Abram does something truly extraordinary. He gives Melchizedek a tenth of absolutely everything, the very first recorded tithe in Scripture. Abram surrenders the spoils of his victory to the priest of God Most High, acknowledging that all he has achieved was orchestrated by the sovereign hand. The king of Sodom angrily interrupts, offering Abram the wealth of the recovered goods, if only he will return the people. But Abram refuses. He raises his hand, swearing an oath to the Lord, and God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, the exact title Melchizedek just used. Melchizedek's theology becomes Abram's oath. Abram tells the king of Sodom that he will not take so much as a thread or a sandal thong, lest the wicked king claim he made Abram rich. Abram's wealth will come from God alone. The encounter with Melchizedek has fortified Abram's soul, elevating his gaze from earthly spoils to eternity. Then, as swiftly as he appeared, Melchizedek vanishes from the biblical narrative. He walks back up the steep hill toward Salem, disappearing into the shadows of history. But his presence leaves an indelible mark on the spiritual DNA of humanity. He becomes an archetype, a shadow cast backward by a brighter light. For 1,000 years, the name of Melchizedek lies completely dormant in the sacred texts. The Levitical priesthood rises, with its endless rivers of animal blood, its complex rituals, its temporary atonements. The priests of Aaron serve in the temple, but they die, and their sons take their place in an endless cycle. Then King David, sitting on his royal throne in Jerusalem, the very city of Salem where Melchizedek once ruled, picks up his lyre. Under the powerful inspiration of the Holy Spirit, David strikes the strings and sings a prophetic oracle that will shake the foundations of the world, Psalm 110. The Lord has sworn and will not change his mind. You are a priest forever, in the order of Melchizedek. David is not speaking of himself. He is speaking of a future king, the Messiah, who will unite the fractured offices of royalty and priesthood into one eternal, unbreakable, divine dominion. The Levitical priests were exclusively from the tribe of Levi, but the promised Messiah was to come from the tribe of Judah, a tribe with no legal right to the altar. How could the Messiah be a priest? David reveals the divine loophole. The Messiah belongs to an older, vastly superior priesthood. This new priesthood would not depend on human ancestry or the frail bloodline of Aaron. It would rest entirely on the power of an indestructible life, a priesthood that does not offer the blood of bulls and goats, which can never truly take away sins, but an offering of profound, enduring, eternal perfection. Fast forward another millennium. The author of the letter to the Hebrews unpacks this breathtaking mystery for the early church. He points directly to Jesus Christ, the true King of righteousness, the ultimate King of peace. And Jesus is the definitive Melchizedek, the one who has no beginning of days and no end. Christ is the eternal Son of God, begotten before all ages. As God, he has no mother. As man, born of the Blessed Virgin Mary, he has no human father. He is the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. He steps into the valley of our broken world to bring peace. Like Abram, we are deeply weary from the battles of this life. We fight against the spiritual forces of wickedness, the kings of our own vices, the deeply entrenched habits of sin that seek to enslave us. We stand in the valley, exhausted, covered in the dust of our daily grinding struggles. And who comes out to meet us? Not a worldly king offering empty, hollow promises. The true King of Salem descends from the heavenly sanctuary. Jesus Christ comes to us, ye bringing not the blood of animals, but the perfect, unbloody, eternal sacrifice. He brings bread and wine. He brings the Holy Eucharist. On the night before he suffered, in the upper room in Jerusalem, the very soil where Melchizedek once stood, Jesus took bread, blessed it, broke it, and gave it to his disciples. He took the chalice of wine, declaring it the blood of the new and eternal covenant. The ancient shadow suddenly became substance. When the Catholic priest stands at the altar today, he does not stand in the line of Aaron. He stands in the person of Christ, participating in the eternal priesthood of Melchizedek. The Roman canon explicitly remembers this moment, asking God to accept our offering as he accepted the offering of your high priest Melchizedek. The bread and wine of the ancient Canaanite king were symbols, mere precursors of a cosmic reality yet to unfold. But the bread and wine on our altars become the very body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ. The King of Righteousness feeds his weary soldiers with his own divine, indestructible life. To understand Melchizedek is to understand the beating heart of the Mass. It is to realize that our worship is not a modern invention, but the fulfillment of the oldest, deepest spiritual longing of humanity. The intense desire for a priest who does not die, a king who brings true, everlasting peace. There is an ancient, beautiful Jewish tradition recorded in the Targums that suggests Melchizedek was actually Shem, the son of Noah, who had outlived his descendants and preserved the primordial knowledge of the one true God. While the Church does not require us to believe this, the symbolism is deeply poetic and profound. It paints a magnificent picture of the old world blessing the new, the survivor of the great flood, the preserver of humanity, passing the torch of divine revelation to Abram, the father of the new covenant people. A sacred bridge across the chaotic waters of history, ensuring that the light of truth remained. But whether he was Shem, a righteous Canaanite king elevated by grace, or a direct manifestation of the pre-incarnate Christ, a theophany, the spiritual truth remains identical. Melchizedek is the eternal signpost, pointing directly to the cross and the empty tomb. He demands that we look beyond the temporary structures of this passing world. Consider the profound, staggering contrast between the two kings in the valley of Shaveh. The king of Sodom says, "Give me the persons, and take the goods for yourself." The world always demands our souls in exchange for material wealth. It seeks to buy our loyalties with the fleeting, corruptible treasures of the earth. But the King of Salem asks for nothing and gives absolutely everything. He brings sustenance, divine blessing, and perfect peace. He points Abram toward the Creator. Christ, our Melchizedek, does the exact same. He does not demand our destruction. He freely offers his own life for our salvation and our eternal flourishing. When we tithe, when we give of our first fruits to the church and to the poor, we are walking directly in the footsteps of Abram. We are declaring, in a tangible, physical way, that the King of Sodom has no hold on us. We are swearing an oath that our wealth comes from God. The priesthood of Melchizedek is eternal because Christ has definitively conquered death. The Levitical priests had to continually offer sacrifices because they were sinners, and because the animals they slaughtered could never pay the infinite debt of human transgression. Their work was never finished. There were no chairs in the ancient Holy of Holies. But Christ, our high priest, offered himself once for all upon the altar of the cross, a perfect, spotless divine victim. And having completed his redemptive work, he ascended into heaven and sat down at the right hand of the Father. His sacrifice is finished, yet its saving power is eternally present today. Every time the bells ring at the consecration, the veil of time and space is miraculously torn. We are transported back to the upper room, back to Calvary, and yes, spiritually back to the valley of Shaveh, We are meeting the King of Peace who brings forth bread and wine to sustain our earthly exile. The early church fathers marveled at this unfathomable mystery. Saint Cyprian of Carthage wrote that in the priest Melchizedek, we see the prefiguration of the sacrament of the Lord's sacrifice. Saint Augustine declared that the offering of Melchizedek is now offered everywhere on earth, from the rising of the sun to its beautiful setting. This is the breathtaking continuity of our glorious Catholic faith. We do not worship an isolated historical figure who lived and died 2,000 years ago. We worship the eternal priest, the one whose reign has no beginning and no end. We participate in a cosmic liturgy that binds together the ancient patriarchs and us. Let the dramatic reality of this encounter wash over your soul. You are Abram, returning from the grueling daily battles of life. You are wounded, tired, carrying the heavy burdens of your family and your community. The world tempts you to take its spoils, to compromise your integrity for a momentary sense of security. But look up. Descending from the heavenly Jerusalem is the true King of righteousness. He calls your name. He spreads a table before you in the presence of your enemies. His chalice overflows. He speaks a word of blessing over your weary soul, anchoring your fragile existence to the unshakable power of God Most High. Do not settle for the cheap negotiations of the king of Sodom. Do not let the culture of death claim the victory of your heart. Lift your eyes to the altar. Receive the bread of angels. Drink from the chalice of salvation. Let the eternal priesthood of Christ transform your mortal battles into immortal triumphs. The mystery of Melchizedek teaches us that God's plan of salvation is vastly larger, older, and more profound than we can possibly comprehend. God is always working behind the scenes, raising up righteous voices in the darkest of times, preparing the way for His Son. No valley is so dark that His peace cannot reach it. As we journey toward our own eternal homeland, let us hold fast to the High Priest who intercedes for us continuously. He understands our weakness, for He shared in our humanity, yet without sin. He is the anchor of our souls, firm and secure, leading us behind the veil into the very heart of the Father. The story of Melchizedek is not merely an obscure historical footnote. It is a blazing beacon of hope. It assures us that righteousness and peace will ultimately triumph over chaos and war. It promises us that the bread of life will never run out, and the chalice of divine mercy will never run dry. Therefore, let us approach the throne of grace with unwavering confidence. Let us bow before the King of Salem, offering Him the tithe of our lives, our deepest hopes, our fears, and our loves. For He is a priest forever. He is the Lord of Lords. He is the man greater than Abraham. Almighty and eternal God, who in the days of old raised up your servant Melchizedek to offer a sacrifice of bread and wine, foreshadowing the great mystery of our redemption. Grant us the grace to always approach the altar of your Son with profound reverence, recognizing in the Holy Eucharist the eternal priesthood of Jesus Christ, our King of righteousness and